24 to 105mm f4L IS-USM. This is probably one of Canon's most versatile zooms. It's a fantastic travel companion as well as an indispensable tool for reportage, which paired together with the 70 to 200mm lens creates an almost complete kit for most daily situations. It's no surprise that it is eagerly improved and modernized by the Japanese manufacturer. And the copy I have it's already its third generation, but the first for the mirrorless RF system. The mentioned RF mount lens debuted on the market in autumn 2018, 13 years after its grandfather, the Canon EF 24-105 f4L IS-USM, and 2 years after its direct predecessor, the IS-2 USM version, which still has a large group of fans and is considered by many as ideal everyday walk-around lens. So, is the RF version a worthy successor of its predecessors? I'll quickly share a short review and sample shots from my travels. Let's start from the build quality. The L series has set a high standard in this regard, and the same applies to today's Star. The body is made of high quality materials, giving a very solid impression. Weighing around 700 grams, it's roughly 100 grams lighter than its EF counterpart and more compact. Without the lens hood, the lens measures about 10.5 cm from the mount base at 24mm and about 15.5 cm with the barrel fully extended at 105mm. With the original lens hood, these measures are 14.5 and 18.5 cm respectively. The glass features a 77mm filter thread, and I recommend every reporter to equip it with a UV protective filter from the day of purchase. The original set comes with a soft case and a hood, which is equipped with a click-on mounting mechanism that securely connects the hood to the lens. It protects the hood very well against accidental detachment and loss. The lens is sealed, allowing work in rainy conditions. Besides the standard two control rings, focusing and zoom, the lens has a third ring, called the control ring. Control rings are a new feature in Canon lenses, enabled by the RF system's 12 communication pins, compared to 8 in the EF system. This allows RF lenses to send and receive more information from the camera body. The control ring can be assigned functions like controlling shutter speed, ISO sensitivity, or aperture value. This smart feature enables precise adjustment without taking your eye off the viewfinder or hunting for buttons on the camera body. Life started to be easier with this fantastic function. I set the ring so that its function activates when I press the shutter button halfway, preventing accidental changes. Its operation can be of course customized in the camera menu. Additionally, the ring operates with a click mechanism, making it easy for photographers to intuitively increase or decrease the parameter. On the body you'll also find 3 standard switches, one for AF operation, another one for optical stabilization, and the last one is a lock that you can engage when the lens is folded. Since I'm already praising this lens so much, maybe it's time to complain about something. The lens barrel has no distance scale anymore. So, if we use this tool with a different glass, we can only accept the work with the scale displayed by the camera body now. For an old user as me, it's a big loss. Now let's talk about autofocus. The AF mechanism is fast, accurate and silent. I had no problem with its operation even in the limited lighting conditions at the wedding venue. You can rely on the mechanism, although I admit that I'm not a fan of all these innovative methods of focusing, a la smile detection, and usually works with one favorite focus point. And on my principles, the AF of this lens has never let me down. However, you have to keep in mind that the f4 aperture has its own physical limitations, and sometimes at the wedding venue I had to support it with laser assistance from the lamp. However, I only turn on such assistance when there are no filmmakers at the event, so as not to spoil their frames with the laser assistance. Let's keep in mind that we will not always work alone. Another nod to filmmakers by Canon is equipping this lens with an AF mechanism function called Nano USM, which, supported by dual pixel CMOS AF technology from the camera body, allows for smooth, silent and fast autofocusing operation while shooting movies. I tested it myself and I have to admit that tracking the filmed character is extremely efficient, smooth and essentially silent. Another big plus. Time for chapter that I like the most. Optical performance. The sharpness of the lens is at a very high level, and this is true for almost every focal length. For the sake of order, let's start with the wide end and sharpness results expressed in lines per image high. A result around 2000 lines can already be considered sharpness at a decent level. Around 2500 is already a good result, giving us a sharp, satisfactory image. Results around 3000 are already razor sharp images. And so, for 24mm we get very sharp images in the center of the frame from apertures f4 till f11, sharp for aperture at f16 and still decent for the smallest hole f22. The sides of the frame are very good up to aperture f16 and slightly weaker for f22, but still acceptable. The 35mm focal length is very similar to the 24mm in terms of sharpness. It is clear that the manufacturer wanted high quality images across the entire wide frame, which only emphasizes its usefulness in tourist and landscape reports. The 75mm focal length is probably characterized by the most even image quality between the center and the edge of the frame. Up to f11 aperture, the resolution bars of the both image fragments go head to head. The long end is more interesting, however. 105mm and wide open give us a sharp image in the center of the frame, but slightly below average on its sides. In my opinion, this is due to an attempt to optimize this focal length for portrait photography, where the model will usually be in the center of the frame and the sides are less important. To sum up, the RF24-105 f4L is simply a sharp lens. The only slightly weaker point of this lens is edge of the frame at the long end, but let's not kid ourselves. The long end will be more useful for a portrait than for a landscape frame that requires a full sharpness. And now the subpoint, which in my opinion is the nail, the color reproduction and contrast. Both of the mentioned parameters are at a very high level, and to be honest, I'm in love with the vivid, saturated colors that this lens can record. This micro contrast that gives the impression of three-dimensionality and makes the objects captured in the photos simply come alive. For me, this is the biggest advantage of Canon as a lens that I take on every vacation trip. This feature makes memories come back eagerly. Now let's talk about the background blur. At the long end, the lens boasts quite a pleasant and delicate background blur, and the 105mm focal length with f4 aperture give us the ability to separate the subject of the photo, in example the model, from the rest of the frame. However, this is not a typical bokeh portrait lens, but when necessary it really does this trick. Coming to the end, a few words about optical defects. I found some minor ones. The first being a tendency to small reflections when a strong light source is in the center of the frame, and the second is a really delicate barrel distortion at the short end. However, it is nothing that could not be straightened using, for example, a Lightroom with minimal loss of image volume. Well, as they say, to the edge. To sum up, I consider this lens to be a very good option for anyone who relies on one universal horse. The aperture f4 combined with modern matrices that provide a high quality noise-free image even at very high ISO is 100% sufficient, and the 700 grams is a mass that will not destroy your spine on many kilometers of walks. I believe that this is the best choice for every tourist, as well as the reporter who knows how to use the high ISO or external flash. I've already discussed the disadvantages of this lens in the last chapters, but it is worth mentioning one more, which is unfortunately the price, which on the day of writing this material oscillated around $1,400. So, is it worth it? If you travel a lot and like to return to your memories from your trip immortalized in photographs, I'm sure that you will not regret any single penny invested in this lens. My rating of this lens is 4+ on scale to 5. I highly recommend it. Thanks for watching, and as always I encourage you to leave a comment or like, and of course check out other content on the channel. Sorry if my accent was a bit overwhelming for you. I'm still working on it.